Imagine it's the year 2004. You have two men, and they're competing for the presidency of the United States.
Right.
They are fighting for the role of the leader of the free world, and publicly they disagree on virtually everything. Tax policy, healthcare, foreign wars, you know
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
But underneath all that televised conflict,
Yeah,
they share this one incredibly specific and highly guarded secret.
right.
When they were both 21 years old, they lay in a coffin inside a windowless building on the Yale University campus,
Mm-hmm.
and they swore an oath of absolute lifelong loyalty to the exact same private society. And today we're finding out how that is even possible, and more importantly, why it matters.
It really is the ultimate paradox of modern democracy. I mean, we demand total transparency from our leaders, yet the architecture of their power is often forged in complete darkness.
Right, and dragging that architecture into the light is exactly what you asked us to do today for this deep dive.
Yeah.
You handed us this incredibly dense investigative dossier titled The White House Pipeline. And you gave us a very specific mission. I mean, this is part 3 of our 4-part miniseries investigating Yale's Skull and Bone Society. But you didn't want us to focus on the spooky rumors or the Hollywood occult tropes.
No, not at all.
You wanted us to find the actual mechanics of power inside this dossier. Like, how does a 19th century undergraduate club systematically cultivate institutional patronage?
Right.
How does it incubate national political dynasties like the Tafts and the Bushes?
Which is a fascinating challenge, honestly, because when you look at the stack of sources you provided, the primary source letters, deep institutional histories, IRS financial data media transcripts.
Yeah, all of it.
A very clear picture emerges from all of that. It is a picture of an infrastructure.
Okay.
If we want to understand how executive power is built and sustained and maintained behind closed doors long before the public ever casts a ballot, well, we have to understand this pipeline.
Right. I want to start right at the foundation of that pipeline then, because if you want to build a machine that produces presidents and cabinet members for over a century, you need an architect.
You do? Yeah.
And looking at the earliest documents in this dossier, the architect seems to be one specific family.
The Tafts.
Yeah.
The origin point for all of this is Alphonso Taft, Yale class of 1833. He is actually the co-founder of the Skull and Bone Society alongside William Huntington Russell.
Okay.
But what the historical records show is that Alphonso Taft didn't just found a collegiate social club. He established a working model for civic advancement. After Yale, he goes on to serve as Secretary of War and Attorney General under President Rutherford B. Hayes in the 1870s.
So the precedent is basically set immediately.
Yeah.
The founder of the society is sitting in the president's cabinet, just demonstrating that this network translates directly to federal authority.
Right, and it is a precedent that his son, William Howard Taft, Yale class of 1878, took to an unprecedented level.
Oh, yeah.
William Howard Taft achieved something no one else in American history has ever managed. He served as the 27th U.S. president and later the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Which is wild.
It really is. That is a staggering consolidation of both executive and judicial power in a single lifetime.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because I'm struggling with this a bit. I see the timeline, but you're telling me Taft reaches the presidency and just starts pulling guys from his old college club to run the country.
Basically, yes.
Because looking at the dossier, he appoints Henry Louis Stimson, another society member from the class of 1888, as his Secretary of War in 1911.
Right.
That just sounds like lazy good old boy nepotism to me. Like, how does a college drinking buddy qualify to run the War Department?
Well, that is the natural question to ask, but it completely misunderstands the mechanism of the society. We have to look at how these members are selected and conditioned.
Okay.
The society only admits 15 juniors a year. They aren't picking random students. They are acting as an elite sorting hat, essentially.
Oh, I see.
They look for individuals who are already demonstrating extreme capability in athletics, campus politics, or academics.
So they are skimming the absolute top tier of talent before they even get to the initiation.
Exactly. But the initiation and the subsequent year are where the real mechanism of loyalty is forged.
Right.
The sources detail the Thursday and Sunday night meetings inside their headquarters known as the Tomb. And during these sessions, members undergo intense psychological bonding.
What does that look like practically?
Well, they are required to recite deep, highly personal biographical histories to one another. They unburden their deepest secrets, their fears, their familial baggage.
Oh, wow. I see. So it's not just a handshake and a secret password. It is forced radical intimacy.
It is. It creates a psychological lock. By the time a 60-year-old president is looking at a younger member like Stimson, he isn't just looking at a fellow alumnus. He is looking at someone whose character discretion and psychological profile have been ruthlessly vetted by a trusted internal network. When you are the president, you know the White House is an incredibly isolating place.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You are surrounded by people with competing agendas. What W.H. Taft found in Henry Stimson was guaranteed alignment.
And the historical impact of that specific appointment is massive. Maybe Stimson isn't just a footnote in the Taft administration.
Not at all. Stimson becomes the absolute embodiment of the bonesman-turned-statesman ideal. He goes on to manage American national defense strategy across 2 world wars.
Just incredible longevity.
Yeah, he serves as Secretary of War again under Franklin D. Roosevelt and Harry S. Truman. He is the man who ultimately oversees the Manhattan Project.
Oh, wow. Which perfectly illustrates your point about discretion.
Exactly.
If you need someone to manage the most classified, world-altering secret in human history, the atomic bomb, you want someone whose fundamental psychological conditioning is rooted in keeping absolute secrets inside a windowless tomb.
Right. The society guaranteed a baseline of shared values and ironclad discretion. This wasn't naked nepotism. It was an extreme vetting mechanism for the American administrative state.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
It transformed from a regional New England brotherhood into a lifelong administrative guild. And that intergenerational patronage continued right down the Taft family line, leading to Robert A. Taft class of 1910, who becomes the Senate Majority Leader and a dominant force in post-World War II politics.
Okay, so the Taft family provides the initial blueprint, right? Government law, military. But society changes, the economy changes.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on 19th century cabinet positions forever. How does this pipeline jump from the era of top hats and muskets into the modern corporate and intelligence state?
It industrializes.
Ah.
And that industrialization is entirely mapped by the rise of the Bush family.
Okay.
If the Tafts laid the foundation, the Bushes built a massive multi-sector skyscraper on top of it. The lineage begins with Prescott Sheldon Bush Yale class of 1917.
All right. I saw his name in the dossier, and this is where I really need you to pull out the primary sources. Because before Prescott Bush becomes a partner at the massive investment bank, Brown Brothers Harriman, and long before he becomes a U.S. Senator from Connecticut, he is stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma for artillery training during World War I.
Yes.
And there's an anecdote in here regarding a historical artifact that I honestly thought was an internet conspiracy theory.
Ah, you were referring to the Geronimo incident.
Yes.
For decades, it was heavily disputed. The rumor was that Prescott Bush and several other society members stationed at Fort Sill dug up the grave of the legendary Apache leader Geronimo, stole his skull, and brought it back to New Haven.
Right. I mean, it sounds like the plot of a bad adventure movie.
He really does.
But you have an actual document in that stack that says otherwise.
Yes.
What does it actually say?
I have the archival transcript right here. So this is a letter written on June 7, 1918. It is from a society member named Wintermead writing to another member, F. Truby Davison. The text reads, "The skull of the worthy Geronimo the Terrible, exhumed from its tomb at Fort Sill by your club, is now safe inside the tomb and bone, together with his well-worn femurs, bit, and saddle horn."
Wait. You're telling me they actually put a confession of grave robbery in writing?
Yes, they did.
And they just casually kept it in their clubhouse?
Yeah, and the descendants of Geronimo took it seriously enough to file a federal lawsuit in 2009. While the legal outcomes and the physical location of the remains have been complex and legally contested, the existence of this 1918 letter alongside internal society logbooks confirms something vital about the psychology of this group.
Yeah, it confirms a level of entitlement that is completely unmoored from normal society, which goes back to a phrase you used earlier in your notes, patrician dynastic legacies. For anyone who doesn't study 20th century sociology, what does that actually mean in this context?
Well, it refers to the WASP aristocracy, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant elite of the Northeast. This was a class of people who possessed old money, immense social standing, and a deeply ingrained belief that they were the natural custodians of the American Republic.
Right.
They operated with a sense of impunity. Taking a sacred artifact wasn't viewed as a crime. It was viewed as the prerogative of the ruling class collecting trophies.
Wow. They felt they were entirely above the law, or at least that the law didn't apply to them in the same way.
Exactly.
And that incredible insulation is what allowed Prescott Bush to seamlessly transition from collecting artifacts to collecting massive financial and political power, which then sets the stage for his son.
Right. George Herbert Walker Bush, Yale class of 1948. His society nickname, interestingly, was Magog, a biblical reference, often denoting a leader of immense power.
A very subtle, humble nickname for a college student.
Very subtle, yeah.
But looking at his trajectory in the dossier, his career isn't just a story of a wealthy kid pulling himself up by his bootstraps. The mechanics of the pipeline are completely exposed here.
Yes, they are.
He graduates, moves to Texas, and enters the oil industry. How does he actually get his foot in the door?
He is handed the key by the network. His entry into the Texas oil business was entirely facilitated by a man named H. Neil Mallon, the CEO of Dresser Industries. And Neil Mallon was a 1917 society member. He was in the exact same cohort as Prescott Bush.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
So the father's society brother hands the son a commercial empire on a silver platter.
It is the purest distillation of intergenerational corporate patronage. That initial job at Dresser Industries gave George H.W. Bush the financial bedrock he needed to launch a political career that is almost unmatched in modern history. Congressman, UN ambassador, director of the CIA, vice president, and ultimately the 41st president of the United States.
Now, here is where the dossier gets really interesting to me, specifically during his time in intelligence. Because George H.W. Bush didn't just benefit from the pipeline, he actively managed it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In the early 1950s, he taps his friend and fellow society member William Sloane Coffin from the class of 1949 to join the CIA.
Right, he brings him right into the fold of the Cold War intelligence apparatus.
But anyone who knows their 1960s history knows that William Sloane Coffin did not stay a company man.
Far from it.
He leaves intelligence, he becomes a reverend, and eventually serves as the chaplain of Yale University. He becomes one of the most famous, outspoken, anti-war peace activists in the entire country.
Right.
He is marching against the very government establishment that his society brothers are running.
So explain the mechanism here. How does a supposedly unified secret network survive when its members, a future Republican CIA director and a radical liberal peace activist, are sitting on totally opposite ends of the ideological spectrum?
What's fascinating here is that the true currency of this order is not shared ideology. They're not a monolithic political party demanding conservative or liberal purity.
Okay.
The currency is institutional access and shared loyalty.
It's basically like a venture capital firm diversifying its portfolio.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like, if you only invest in conservative defense hawks, you lose all your influence the minute a liberal anti-war movement takes power.
Exactly.
But if you invest in both the CIA director and the guy leading the protests outside the CIA, your network retains its access to power, regardless of who wins the culture war.
That is a phenomenal way to conceptualize it. They are capturing human capital across all sectors. Oil intelligence activism, financial regulation. They want a presence at every pressure point in American society.
Wow.
And this strategy reaches a fever pitch with the third generation of the Bush dynasty, George W. Bush class of 1968.
The 43rd president. And it is fascinating how he handled the public scrutiny of this network. Because by the late 90s, people were really starting to ask questions.
They were. I have a quote here from his 1999 autobiography, A Charge to Keep. He addresses the society directly, but notice the framing. He writes, "In my senior year, I joined Skull and Bones, a secret society so secret I can't say anything more. It was a chance to make 14 new friends."
14 new friends.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly calculated piece of PR. He takes this sprawling 200-year-old apparatus of immense federal and corporate power and shrinks it down to a quaint, relatable college memory. Just a bunch of buddies hanging out.
But the actions of those buddies speak much louder than the autobiography. Once George W. Bush is in the Oval Office, he utilizes the pipeline just as his father and the Tafts did.
Right.
In the early 2000s, in the wake of the massive Enron scandal, the American financial system is in crisis. He needs a chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission to aggressively regulate Wall Street. Who does he appoint?
According to the records, he appoints William H. Donaldson, Yale class of 1953.
A fellow society member and the co-founder of the major Wall Street investment firm, Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette. Once again, when the stakes are at their absolute highest regulating the entire American financial sector, the president bypasses traditional political channels and pulls directly from the society's vetted talent pool.
Okay, I have to stop and ask a purely logistical question. We are talking about multi-generational dynasties, lifelong loyalty oaths, private islands managing Wall Street.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You cannot sustain that for 2 centuries on handshakes and fond memories of Thursday night meetings. There has to be a physical economic foundation. Like, who is paying the property taxes on these secret tombs? Who funds a 200-year pipeline?
Right. You're looking for the corporate engine, and it exists. Abstract networks require hard economic reality to persist.
Okay.
The financial bedrock of this society is a legal entity called the Russell Trust Association, or the RTA. It was incorporated in 1856 by Daniel Coit Gilman, another of the society's early foundational figures.
So it's basically the Wayne Enterprises to Batman.
Yes, exactly.
It is this incredibly boring, legitimate, tax-filing corporate shell that exists entirely to fund and protect the highly secretive underground operations of the network.
That analogy is spot on. And because it is legally structured as a tax-exempt 501c3 nonprofit, the banality of American bureaucracy applies to them just like anyone else. That is so weird to think about.
No, this hyper-elite, ultra-secret society has to file IRS Form 990s every single year, just like your local community theater or a neighborhood animal shelter.
Well, I am looking at the IRS data in the dossier right now, and the numbers are wild. The RTA reported $3.9 million in physical assets in 2016, and as of 2024, they are sitting on a $17 million endowment. What exactly are they buying with that money?
The physical assets are highly specialized to maintain the psychological conditioning we discussed earlier.
Right.
They own the tomb, the windowless brownstone at 64 High Street in New Haven, built in 1856.
Right.
That is the secure facility for initiations debates and the recitation of those biographical histories. But they also own Deer Island, a 40-acre private retreat located on the St. Lawrence River.
A 40-acre island for summer networking.
Yeah.
But let me play devil's advocate here. Here's where it gets really interesting to me. If it operates as a registered 501c3, and it has a multi-million-dollar endowment, and it owns real estate where alumni go to drink and reminisce.
Right. Is it functionally any different from a really well-funded Ivy League alumni association? Like, do they just have better PR and a spookier building?
That's a fair point. On paper, legally and financially, you could argue they are identical to an alumni association. But the functional difference is institutional memory and the enforcement of the pipeline.
Oh, sorry.
The RTA ensures that the physical spaces required for that extreme psychological bonding never decay. If the roof of the tomb leaks, the RTA fixes it.
Oh, okay.
If a U.S. Senator and a Fortune 500 CEO need a completely secure, unrecorded environment to coordinate policy, Deer Island is fully staffed and waiting. The 501c3 structure provides a legal and financial immortality that a mere social club simply cannot achieve. It grounds the mythology of a secret network in bulletproof corporate continuity.
Wow. So you have the Taft Blueprint establishing the political precedent, the Bush industrialization capturing the corporate and intelligence sectors, and the Russell Trust Association providing the endless financial runway. All of this was quietly humming along, mostly out of the public eye for over a century and a half. But then the pipeline did its job almost too well.
It really did.
It produced a scenario so incredibly unlikely that it dragged the entire society out of the shadows and onto national television.
A 2004 United States presidential election. It was the absolute climax of the pipeline's operational history.
It is a statistical anomaly that is genuinely hard to wrap your head around. I mean, for the first time in modern American history, both major political party nominees for the presidency were members of the exact same collegiate secret society.
Right.
You have the incumbent Republican president, George W. Bush class of 1968, and you have the Democratic challenger, Senator John Kerry class of 1966.
The journalist Ron Rosenbaum famously dubbed it a skull-to-skull smackdown. And when you look at the math, it reveals a staggering concentration of power.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because of this specific matchup, a society member was guaranteed to occupy the Oval Office for 3 out of 5 consecutive presidential terms. George H.W. Bush, then George W. Bush, and then inherently either Kerry or a second term for Bush.
And this is the moment the mainstream media finally wakes up. This isn't just a quirky biographical footnote anymore. It is a glaring, unavoidable question about elite influence at the highest possible level of democratic government.
Definitely.
And looking at the media transcripts in this dossier, it led to some of the most surreal, uncomfortable television interviews I have ever seen.
Oh, you were looking at the Meet the Press interviews with Tim Russert.
Yes. I need you to read the exchange from the February 8, 2004 broadcast because the deflection is incredible. Russert has President George W. Bush sitting in the Oval Office, and he just goes right for the throat.
Yeah, he does. Russert asks him point blank, "You are both in skull and bones the secret society." President Bush replies, "It's so secret we can't talk about it."
Unbelievable.
But Russert doesn't let the deflection work. He immediately follows up with number 322, which is the Society's sacred emblem and room number.
Oh, wow.
And according to the transcript notes, President Bush just laughs, awkwardly looks away, and completely forces a subject change.
It is wild to watch the President of the United States get visibly flustered by a college club reference. But what is even wilder is that John Kerry uses the exact same playbook.
Yeah.
2 months later, April 18, 2004, Russert has Senator Kerry on the show. Russert asks him what this shared membership actually tells the American public about their leadership. What does Kerry say?
Kerry's response is almost identical. He says, "Not much, because it's a secret."
Wow.
Russert presses him further, asking for transparency, and Kerry finally snaps a bit, saying, "You trying to get rid of me here?"
It is like watching two people trying to keep an inside joke hidden from the entire country, except the inside joke is about who gets to control the nuclear arsenal.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly illustrates the profound tension between private elite associations and public democratic accountability.
Right. When confronted by a journalist, both of these men who were viciously attacking each other's policies on the Iraq War, on taxes on healthcare, they were suddenly perfectly united. They both independently chose to uphold a private oath of secrecy they took in a windowless room when they were 21 years old.
Yes, entirely overriding the American public's expectation of transparency from their commander-in-chief.
Which brings up the comparison in the dossier to the British system, because we act like this is a uniquely American conspiracy, but it's actually a very old mechanism of power, isn't it?
Exactly. Ron Rosenbaum argued that the best framework for understanding this isn't an occult conspiracy theory, it's the British Old Boy Network.
Right.
Historically, graduates of Eton College Old Etonians dominated British governance across all party lines. They debated each other in Parliament, but they all came from the same dormitories and shared the same fundamental class loyalties.
That makes a lot of sense.
Skull and Bones is simply the American equivalent. It is a quiet, highly efficient social mechanism that ensures a specific class of vetted individuals maintains their hands on the levers of power, regardless of which political party technically wins the election.
But, 2004 was a long time ago. So what does this all mean for the society today? What happens to a society like this when the public spotlight really hits it?
Well, the dossier shows that being thrust onto Meet the Press brought a ton of external pressure, but there were already massive internal fractures happening.
Okay.
The world was changing, and the pipeline was struggling to adapt. The pressure of external public visibility in the 2000s was actually mirrored by an intense internal civil war in the 1990s.
Over what?
For over a century and a half, the society was an exclusively male, largely white patrician institution. But the major breaking point came in 1991 over the admission of women.
And I want to clarify some terminology here for the listener, because the dossier keeps using the word tapping.
Yeah.
When we say the 1991 class tapped 7 women, we're talking about the fiscal initiation ritual, right?
Correct. Tapping is the literal process where current members walk across campus, find the 15 juniors they have selected, physically tap them on the shoulder, and offer them membership into the society.
Right. So 1991, the current undergraduate members tapped 7 women for the incoming cohort. And looking at the historical record, the old guard alumni absolutely lost their minds.
Oh, yeah, they did.
This wasn't a polite disagreement over brandy and cigars. This became a full-blown legal crisis.
It escalated immediately. A group of conservative alumni, prominently led by the famous political commentator William F. Buckley Jr. class of 1950, actually went to court.
Oh my gosh.
They secured a temporary restraining order from a judge to legally block the initiation of these women.
I'm trying to picture this scene. They literally changed the locks.
They did.
You had these powerful, wealthy alumni descending on New Haven, changing the locks on the tomb, and forcing the current students to go hold their meetings down the street at a different club, the Manuscript Society building.
It is a profoundly vivid image, really. The old guard literally and legally trying to lock the heavy wooden doors of their tomb against the tide of cultural change.
Right.
But the alumni network wasn't unified on this. Other prominent members pushed back hard against Buckley's faction. John Kerry, for instance, publicly supported the inclusion of the women.
Oh, okay.
Eventually, the internal pressure became too great. They held a second alumni vote in October 1991. The dispute was resolved, and membership was formally open to women, starting with the class of 1992.
And that adaptation seems to have completely changed the demographic makeup of the pipeline.
Yes, it did.
The later documents in the dossier note that by the 2020s, the order has largely abandoned tapping those patrician dynastic legacies. They aren't just looking for the sons of senators anymore.
No, not at all.
They are heavily focused on tapping prominent campus activists, student leaders from highly diverse backgrounds, people who challenge the establishment. But this brings up a massive question for me. If the order historically built its immense federal power on these wealthy families like the Tafts and the Bushes, and now they are filling the tomb with 21-year-old grassroots activists, doesn't that dilute the White House pipeline? Does the network lose its power?
It is the exact opposite, actually. What you are describing is the essential dynamic of institutional survival.
How so?
Institutions only survive if they can adapt to the prevailing currency of power in their specific era. In the 1950s, the ultimate currency of power was the Cold War consensus, so the society tapped CIA directors, defense contractors, and diplomats.
Right.
But remember the venture capital analogy we discussed with William Sloane Coffin. They also tapped the activists because activism has power.
Right. So today in the 21st century, cultural influence, digital activism, and diversity of thought are the major forms of social capital.
Precisely. If the society only tapped legacy bankers today, it would quickly become a dusty, irrelevant relic.
That makes total sense.
By identifying and bringing in modern activists and diverse cultural leaders, they are executing a brilliant strategy of co-option. They ensure that whoever is going to shape the future of American culture, regardless of their background, is bound by the intimate psychological ties and loyalty of the society.
It is the venture capital portfolio strategy operating at maximum efficiency. They are diversifying their holdings to ensure they survive for another 200 years.
Exactly. They are securing long-term viability by investing in the vanguard of the next generation.
So looking back at this entire dossier you asked us to investigate, I think the core takeaway here is incredibly clarifying. If you want to understand how power works, you have to strip away the mythology.
Yeah, absolutely.
The true power of Skull and Bones isn't found in stolen artifacts, and it's not found in some movie villain occult conspiracy. The power is found in the mundane, highly disciplined, brilliantly effective mechanics of corporate networking patronage and institutional memory.
Perfectly said.
It started with Alfonso Taft's early blueprints for government service. It scaled up into a massive corporate machine through the Bush family's oil and intelligence empire. It secured its immortality through the tax-exempt legal shell of the Russell Trust Association.
Right.
And it reached its absolute zenith in that surreal 2004 skull-to-skull election where two men refused to break a private oath on national television. Understanding these mechanics is what finally allows us to see the invisible scaffolding that holds up American political power.
It entirely removes the mystery and replaces it with cold, functional mechanics. But studying this pipeline does leave us with one final, deeply provocative paradox to consider as we close this dossier.
What's that?
We have spent this time mapping how perfectly this old boy patronage network operated during the print and broadcast eras of the 19th and 20th centuries. Back then, secrecy was easily maintained. It was the point of the whole endeavor.
Sure.
But look at the world we live in today. We are in a hyper-transparent, aggressively decentralized digital age. Every secret is just one leaked email, one viral video, or one rogue tweet away from total global exposure.
Oh, absolutely.
Can a physical pipeline that relies on radical secrecy, rooted in a windowless brownstone in Connecticut, actually survive in an era that demands absolute transparency? When the entire world is watching, will the pipeline finally burst under the pressure of the digital age? Or will it simply ride itself even deeper underground, adopting new methods we haven't even begun to recognize?
Yeah, it's the ultimate question.
Yeah.
Because as this dossier proves, when you look past the public architecture of politics, the debate stages, and the donor lists, the landscape gets murky very quickly. The public X-ray machine doesn't always work on executive power.
Yeah.
Sometimes to understand who's really running the country, you just have to follow the pipeline into the dark and see where it leads.
Until next time.